Hi there, Andrew again. I'm the youth worker for the South Liverpool circuit, but I'm also a filmmaker by trade. And what I'd like to do is go through some films and some TV and start to question: is there anything useful that we can get from these films? And I think there are really important things that we can gain from looking at films and television stories and all sorts of things like that. That the Bible actually tells us that there's a really important kind of underpinning in all of our stories. That's the ones that we tell and the ones that we watch on film as well. It says in Ecclesiastes that God has set eternity on the hearts of men. Now that means that God has put in the very deepest part of us, into our very blueprint, a longing for eternity. So when Adam and Eve were first made, they were made to live forever. And that longing stays inside us, that we feel like we should live forever. So when we come up against something that puts it under threat, so illness, death, pain, all of that stuff, it feels like it's wrong. And that's because God's put eternity on our hearts. Every storyteller longs for the world that God originally made. So even if we just take this verse at surface level, that God has put eternity on our hearts, we want to live forever, we want to avoid death, and we want to make the most of life and take advantage of it. That takes us into a whole load of storytelling, like The Bucket List, where Jack Nicholson and Morgan Freeman are threatened by death, and they go and they enjoy the last few days of their lives, and they see what's important in life. There's stories of love that is ended too soon, and those stories are really sad, and they wrench with us because we know that death doesn't belong there. And stories about longing that death didn't exist in the world, that cut down heroes in their prime, like Million Dollar Baby. So there's loads and loads of films, and I'm sure you can think of some as well, where death comes and they cut something short, and that's a really sad ending to a film, because we know deep down eternity is on our hearts, so death doesn't belong. Okay, but if we widen that out a little bit more, God has put eternity on our hearts, and He's put on our hearts how God intended the world to be. So number one, He intended us to live forever, but it's wider than that. God's world was wider than that. He intended us to know where we belonged. So we look at stories like Toy Story, where they have Andy written on the soles of their feet. They know who they belong to, and they have a place that they belong. And stories like Frozen, where Elsa doesn't really fit in. Her powers, the way that she is, she feels like she has to cover them over. She won't be accepted, and that acceptance is something that comes with the world that God made. We have stories where we long for stable relationships, like any teen drama you can think of, or Friends, where Ross and Rachel on again, off again, on again, off again. Like they're looking for that certainty, that strong relationship, and that strong relationship was there when God made the world, and that's how He intends the world to be. And we see that in all sorts of stories. And also what we had when God created the world was a world of truth, where we knew what things were. So many stories are about finding truth, finding the way the world is, like Inception, a really exciting story where He's looking for the real world. He's looking for the truth in His existence. But underpinning everything is that happily ever after that God gives us with the world that He originally made, and the way that He intends the world to be. And there's so many stories that finish with a happily ever after. I'm sure you can think of loads of them. Try and think of 5. That can be your task this week. Try and think of 5 films that finish with they lived happily ever after. All right. But this is one of my favourites. If you haven't seen it, give it a watch because it's brilliant. Everything goes against these two people, against Wesley and Princess Buttercup, but all the time they're striving, they're really pushing the whole time to find each other and to live out their happily ever after together, and that is what we're hunting for in all of our storytelling, isn't it, really? So yeah, if you can think of this week five films with a happily ever after ending, and also have a think about stories that are about avoiding death or enjoying life, about finding a place where you belong, lots of teen dramas and things. Have a think about finding stable relationships, and about finding truth in the world. Have a think about those as well. There's so many, but yeah. Thanks very much, everyone. It's been fun, and looking forward to speaking to you again next week. And yeah, have a nice week. Ta-da, bye.